Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Final Fantasy VI Brave New World mod, version 2.2 RC2, part 4. Last time we took on Mount Kultz and Vargas and got to the Returner's hideout. This time we're doing Lethe River and Ultros, and if I have time, I may do one or two of the scenarios. I want to try to keep videos from here on out to be about a half hour a piece. That way it's easier for people to sort of skim through what they're trying to find if they want to skip through videos to get to a specific section. I made the first couple videos an hour long because imagine if you watch just the first video and it only gets to, say, like, right when you leave Narshe. Not much really happens. And there's a lot of information I wanted to front load, as I said before. Hope you remember to put them in the back row. So yeah, Brave New World sometimes does cruel things like this that are like nods to. I hope you remember stuff from the original game. But of course, they eventually put them in the back row by default. So that line's kind of pointless. But it's meant to be, I guess, funny. We should clear this section no problem, honestly. And also, I double-checked the audio levels. It's deceptive because on my end, the audio is very quiet. And so I just assume it's too quiet, but whenever I actually play it, it ends up being acceptable. Nope, we didn't get it off in time. Fortunately, blind does not affect Noise Blaster, and that's nice. Doing this section on level 3 or NHT, or God forbid level 3 NHT, can be really tough. Especially level 3, because Banon has just enough health that even in the back row he can be one-shot by Ultros, unless you are using Defend. And so it's basically too risky to have him do anything else, even using health. Albatross are very deadly. They are set on a timer where after enough time passes, they will use Fireball, which hurts a lot and casts Sap. It's very deadly. Oh, I forgot to look at the Fairy Charm. I might decide to use that. We got that in the last video. It's hidden. So it's always recommended that you take them out first. Knowing how to stagger your attacks, not only offensively but defensively, is very key. So you see how that entire encounter went exactly as planned. I knew that I didn't know the first attack by Sabin would miss, But once it did miss and I started laying my attacks, I knew that the best thing to do would be to use AoE fire rather than concentrated fire on Albatross. That way I could get just enough damage on all the enemies so that by the time Edgar's auto crossbow came out, all 3 of the enemies will have died from the overall damage taken. But I made sure that Banon, even though his input was put last, his health would go off before Edgar's auto crossbow because the delay from his attack is shorter. That way we could actually get the heal off before we got the kill. Knowing how attacks are supposed to be staggered and how they lay out is a big part of, not really necessary, but it's a nice way to increase your odds of victory. So Fairy Charm blocks Sleep and Muddle. I would have liked it if they gave you Life Bell here to block Sap and then maybe gave you Fairy Charm or something later. But it's whatever. Up the brightness just a tiny little bit. I keep my brightness low. Too much strain on the eyes. Saves battery, etc. And Noise Blaster is very good, very OP. Because most things early on are susceptible to it. And even late game, at least some things are still susceptible to it. A lot of enemies aren't immune to the statuses they provide, presumably because it wasn't intended for those attacks to be used against them, which is why muddling them can be particularly devastating. So Albatross, for example, can be affected by the Sap status effect that their Fireball uses. And Fireball is a really useful ability with the Albatross Rage when you get Gal for that very reason. Because even if the damage output isn't amazing, being able to set Sap is always worth it. Got a restore point here. Yeah, I think we'll have enough time to do one of the scenarios. I usually do Lock scenario first, but for timing reasons we may do Edgar Banon and Terra instead. So Banon has, I'll see if I can get it off. I can't remember if he had this in the original game, but in this game he has a Thunder Rod, which has a chance to proc and do insane damage. We're talking like, granted I think the enemies here might be weak to Bolt, but he can deal more damage than any single party member in your party at this time if he gets this proc off. It's particularly devastating against people like Ultros, and I will be using it if I had the chance to. So Ultros here, it's the same deal as the original game. The big difference here is that there's a particular strategy you're meant to do, and that's this. The first thing you do is you open up with is, we're going to defend for now, Pummel. So that way you get sap damage. See what I mean? A little over 1,000 damage. So we're literally just going to do this. Because because at this level he won't be able to one-shot Banon. I can literally just defend and let sap damage tick him down to the last box, which won't take long. I probably won't do that though, because that will just take a lifetime. I'm just going to DPS him and play aggressively. Oh, nice. This is the first time we're seeing a boss with the counter other than Welk. Ultros in the earlier versions had too much HP. They actually had to tone him down, which was good. Edgar with heavy armor and being in the back row means it's harder for him to be killed so easily. And just to play it safe, we're going to, because I don't think we'll make it in time, give Banon a dried meat. He should be dead right about now. Seafood soup? So, the first major change in the 3 scenarios, as you can see, are we actually have an imp, which is known as the unequimp. Combination of the words unequip and imp, unequimp. And what he's here to do in the 3 scenarios is exactly as it is implied, and that is to be able to unequip anyone. You can either unequip those not in your party, which is everyone, or no. So we're going to go ahead and do that. What this allows you to do is have a fresh loadout of equipment for each scenario. So a common problem in other versions of the game, or the original version, is you'll start in lock scenario, but then you'll realize that you don't have the equipment that these guys have. It's really annoying. I think the only downside to doing this is that these 3 characters will be re-equipped with like standard default equipment and no relics, but that happens anyway. So normally I do lock scenario first, but I don't think we can do it in 15 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and do these guys first. I usually do lock scenario first, then Edgar, Bannon, Terra scenario, and then Sabin scenario last. I do Sabin scenario last because of the length. But I also do it because of theoretical narrative reasons. I could re-equip them, but I'm just going to wait. So basically, the idea is that narratively, something that a lot of pieces of work, TV shows and such do is, what they do is they purposefully cut away from a person or a group of people right at a particularly tense moment or reveal so that they can move over to another party. And the purpose behind doing this is so that the viewer can be left with more anticipation that, oh, come on, why did we cut away from this group? I wanted to see what happens. And some people don't like that, but what you have to understand is that this is done narratively on purpose to keep you at the edge of your seat, because now you really want to know what this thing is. So now that's all you can think about. And so it makes the time period of switching with that secondary group kind of move faster. It's all just kind of a bait to play on like your emotions, basically. So based on that narrative idea, I think that because we haven't seen Locke in a minute, because we've done the whole Lethe River section, it makes... Ah, shit. That's my bad. It makes sense to cut away to Locke first. And then after that, cut to the raft. Basically, if Sabin disappears from the raft, and then we immediately cut to him, the suspense of wondering what has happened to him gets answered too quickly. We're supposed to have it linger on our minds. And so it makes no sense to cut to him. And it makes no sense to cut to the same group of people that we were just with, only with one less person, just to end up seeing the same scenes. So it makes sense that the scene we'd cut to first would be Locke's. And then after that, you could make an argument for Sabin or for Edgar, Bannon, and Terra, but I like to do Edgar, Bannon, and Terra secondary, because so much stuff happens in the Sabin scenario. It's literally longer than the other two scenarios combined. Yeah, Exocyte can be pretty dangerous because of their rock ability. Okay, so... yeah, see, it like sort of re-equips them. I think this is all fine, and I think this is also all fine. And we're going to just leave it as is. Oh, and as you can see with review, you can now see the equipment of characters you otherwise can't interact with equipment-wise. So we see that Banon has a thunder rod, a leather hat, cotton robe, things to be expected. He has a talisman, of all things, which is one of the best relics we can get at this point in the game. And he also has a cod piece. I don't know what it does, but if I looked in the game files, I could do so. I think it increases proc rate or something. Or no, it makes him immune to muddle and blind, I think. Archetype. He's immune to certain statuses, and that is why. In the reimagined mod, he says, and I'm Captain Bosch of Talmaska. That's another mod I would like to do video coverage for. There's a lot less of it. It's a relatively newer mod. Final Fantasy VI Reimagined is a reimagined version of the game that hopes to improve and alter dialogue, add additional scenes. Combat-wise, it's mostly the same. The only really significant difference it does is it tweaks the gameplay a little bit, but it's more similar to vanilla than, say, this mod. But the shining grace would be the translation, which I think is really, really good, and also it adds additional scenes, like some of which I think are actually really nice and necessary. For example, there's a scene of Terra and Celeste fighting in a spar when Terra is affected by the slave crown thanks to Kefka. There's an additional scene in this scene coming up where Terra notices the hole in the floor being patched up, or there's an additional boss fight in this scenario too, in that version. Additional scenes with Cid, stuff like that. Scenes to help flesh out the narrative where it feels like there should be conflict, but there just isn't. It's just kind of glossed over. This is really deadly. Step Mine. Step Mine, I think it's called Traveler in the original. Step Mine does damage based on how many steps you've taken, basically. And it can be maxed out up to 9,999 if you have enough steps, which I have done before, if you can believe it. And it's particularly deadly at this point in time, especially if you do the scenario last, because almost certainly if Step Mine ends up hitting Banon, it's a game over. It's a really cheap way to make sure to keep you on your toes, because this section is a lot harder than vanilla. It's almost unfair. Great. 33% chance we're about to die right here. Okay, cool. They're also coded in their AI to not use this move until you reach a minimum certain level. What this means is that you won't be able to realistically see them use it when you are fighting them solo with Terra. And you are basically almost guaranteed to see it with Banon in this scenario. Another thing Reimagine does is it adds an additional scene here with the Moogles, with Terra. It does a lot of cool stuff to flesh out the characters. I shouldn't talk too much about that mod when I'm playing this one, but it might be a while before I play it, so... Psycho Belt, which was formerly known as Rage Belt, is a relic for Gao. What it does is it increases his physical output by 25%, and it causes him to nullify lightning, which is great because Gao already has the means to resist or nullify elements depending on the rage that he has. So it ends up being a really cool relic for him. I think this is our first time getting poisoned, so we'll be able to see the effect in effect. We got fire too. It's a really good time to have it. Okay, let's see it. Yeah, see, look, it's actually bearable. Look at that. Isn't that so cool? That's really awesome. I liked the old design because it incentivized... It was annoying enough to incentivize you to deal with it. The problem was that if you couldn't deal with it, it was just too much, to the point where some people legitimately can't play the game. I've got to use these. Because it borderline gives them seizures. It's a very seizure warning effect. But now it's mitigated, and I think that's really cool. Another reason I think that this scenario should be second instead of the Sabin scenario is specifically this line right here. That Esper is either going to save us or dig us an early grave. It's a very ominous cliffhanger-like line. It's a line that could work well at the end of an episode, but I think is best served at the halfway point of an episode. For something for the viewer to stew on and be left with anticipation for the implication of this line and what may come in the future. And that's why I think the Sabin scenario being third, coming after this line, is the best way to go about it, because then you can stew on that line while you're playing through that scenario up until you reach Narshe. We did it out of order, though. I figured it would have taken us longer to beat that scenario. There used to be a feature in this version of this mod, an older version, where if you fail to steal in time, then the merchant will summon a bunch of other merchants and they'll just wipe the floor with you. Not entirely sure why he threw up. Alright, we're going to call the video here, and next time we will complete this scenario as well as the Doma section of the Sabin scenario, hopefully. So, peace out.